In this episode, we're going to explore Dubuque, Iowa, and its surroundings. Also, Potosi, Wisconsin, and Galena, Illinois.
I'm riding with my RV, wherever I want to be. 'Cause I'm free in my RV. Yeah.
Well, it is coffee with almost a view of the sunrise. Definitely a view of the river here. Well, good morning, and what better way to start the day than with some Magic Spoon cereal? Cereal reinvented, actually, and I want to thank them for sponsoring this episode. They have 8 different flavors, and you get to build your own box with your 4 favorites. Today I'm feeling adventurous, so I'm trying the fruity one, but all of them are great, really. The main thing here is 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs, and only 140 calories in each serving. It also checks all the important boxes, being keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free, and they actually taste good. So they have this 100% happiness guarantee, so if by any chance you don't like it, they will refund your money, no questions asked. You can click my link to get $5 off your first order, and let me know which flavors you're gonna try. The child in me prefers cookies and cream, but the fruity one is really good too, actually.
This is where we're staying, Miller Riverview Park. Very reasonably priced, actually, considering its location. Let's fly around a little bit so we can get a better idea where we really are. Right here, on this island, on the Mississippi River. That's downtown Dubuque in the distance. Oh, by the way, the neighbor took our picnic table, but it's okay. They can keep it. We don't really need it. Well, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, almost. And what we're gonna do today, basically start exploring the Dubuque area. And we're gonna start in the south and work our way north. We're going to Mines of Spain. It's supposed to be a pretty area, so it's only about 5 minutes away. It's right there. This will be our first stop, the Julian Dubuque Monument.
Well, this is supposed to be one of the best viewpoints of the Mississippi River here. And there's a statue of Julian Dubuque, which something tells me that he has something to do with the founding of this town, but oh, look at that view. I'm sure it's better from over there. Anyway, we'll find out the history here now. What a beautiful trail. Look at this.
It is, by the way, not a statue, but a monument made out of Galena limestone. Chief Piosta of the Meskwaki tribe, a close friend of Julian Dubuque.
Oh, look at that.
Dubuque, by the way, was also the founder of the city right there. Julian was, allegedly, married to Chief Piosta's daughter named Potosa. There's a town across the river called Potosi. They must be related, right? And here it is, the Julian Dubuque Monument. Beautiful views of the Mississippi from this vantage point. Too bad it is a little bit hazy. Okay, we're gonna start going back. Can't wait to go into the city and explore a little bit. It seems to have that unique character that older cities have. And considering Dubuque arrived here in 1785, I think it qualifies as old, even though the city wasn't officially chartered until 1833. Check out the monarch butterfly. Alright, let's continue exploring. I believe this might be Catfish Creek. Not the clearest water, but I bet you it's great for kayaking. Let's go on a little hike.
Okay, we're gonna attempt being the key word, to do the Horseshoe Bluff Trail. It's a little less than a mile on a loop, but if it is too much up and down, if the bugs are bad, we're gonna turn around. So here we go. This is the first stretch, which is not too bad. No, it's not OSHA compliant by any means, but it's not a bad stair. Yeah, I wasn't planning on doing this, so I forgot my hiking shoes. We've kind of reached here our first overlook, and it's beautiful over there with those bluffs and the Mississippi River in the distance. Let me zoom in with the other camera.
We can almost see the city from here. Let's go all the way to the bottom. There are a few levels, actually.
It's beautiful out here.
Beautiful trail, and really, aside from an uphill part at the beginning, really not strenuous at all. Just be careful if you're prone to vertigo. There are no guardrails. Down and down we go on these stairs. We are now, I believe, at the very flat bottom level. Very striking views of the vertical walls on both sides. You almost forget we're in Iowa.
That's the end of the bluff there. The river should be pretty close up ahead. We have some kind of overlook here. Let's see what... You can probably see the river over there, the Mississippi.
Can't really see the river from this vantage point, just this pond and these wetlands.
Let's continue. We're more than halfway there. We decided to do the whole trail, the whole loop. So I looked in all trails, as I should have done at the beginning, and it's gonna be easy peasy. Yeah, I see the road there. It's the worst part was the beginning.
Well, success. Now we're gonna go into town because, I mean, it was a short hike, but I think we've earned that IPA. It is just beautiful country out here. I just love this juxtaposition of the beautiful city against its industrial waterfront. The port of Dubuque. This is called Star Brewery, and we've been looking for such brewery for about 5 minutes, and all we found was a winery. And it turns out it is actually a historic building that used to be a brewery. It was established in 1898, but after some ups and downs in the 1980s and 1990s, it finally shut down in 1999. And all that remains is the historic building and some old artifacts. And it is now a winery. That's the winery's tasting room. And it turns out they also have beer, Potosi IPA from across the river in Wisconsin.
Yeah, Dubuque Star Brewery doesn't exist anymore. It's just the building. So we could have been looking for the brewery all day, you know, roaming around. Yeah, the brewery is more like a museum of a brewery.
And there's the shot tower. Let's see if we can get closer later. And I'm telling you, it is a city of contrasts, with all these cargo trains passing through this otherwise beautifully landscaped area. There it goes, disappearing into the tunnel. You know I love trains. Let's go for a stroll along the river walk.
Well, they have all these sculptures here and on the river walk.
And that's the convention center and the local fauna. Let's continue. Let's try and get closer to that tower. Uh-oh, 10-9 clearance. Good thing we're not towing, but Minitini and most camper vans would have made it through. Here's the tower, so let's read what it says. So it was designed to make lead balls for muskets, and then it became a fire watchtower until it, ironically, caught fire and was completely gutted. Next up, the world's steepest, shortest scenic railway, the Fenelon Place Elevator. This is the iconic Courthouse Building and the Clock Tower Plaza. Check it out, it is Monsieur Dubuque himself, and that's just kind of weird. It is a very pretty part of town with all these Victorian homes. And there it is, the Fenelon Place elevator. Let's park right here. The project was apparently promoted back in 1882 by one Mr. Graves, former mayor and senator, in order to cut half an hour from his trip round the bluff so he could take a nap after lunch. True story. It's burned down several times and the whole thing was rebuilt and upgraded in 1977, so chances are we're not gonna end up in the Mississippi today. I mean, some of the hardware seems a little bit worn out, so I don't know. I'm just kidding, of course. I'm sure it is fine. They have inspectors and all that, right? And we've made it! And what a view of Dubuque! Always great to get this bird's eye view of a city. Apparently, this is the tallest and the steepest and shortest incline railway of this kind in the world, actually. Back down we go. Well, we survived the Fenelon elevator. Whew. Not only because of the heat, but this thing, it's been there for a long time and it's worn out and let's continue exploring a little bit. There's once again the famous clock tower. As I said, Dubuque does have that certain older city feel. It's got character. We're going to pass once again in front of that stylish courthouse. We're thinking maybe stop by that Julian Dubuque hotel, see what it looks like inside. It's supposed to be one of the city's landmarks. Never mind, we changed our minds. Tell you what, let's go back and take a break, and then we'll keep on exploring. Well, took a long break, even took a nap. Long nap, longer than we needed to actually. But it is now like 7 p.m. Sunset is gonna be like in an hour and a half. So let's see what we can see, see a little more here in Dubuque. We're gonna drive a couple of miles north of town to Eagle Point. From the top of the bluff, you're supposed to be able to see incredible views of the Mississippi River and the surroundings. It is just $1 to go into the park, so it doesn't really seem cost-effective paying someone to collect the fee, but hey, I'm not complaining.
here we are, overlooking Lock and Dam number 11 on the mighty Mississippi.
Fly, pelicans! No, they don't want to fly. Lazy pelicans. And here's another pelican from the dam. And the locks here on the left. We were gonna go back to town, but decided to come to the end of the road, and I'm glad we did. There's a good view. There's a good view of downtown, I think.
Check it out, that's where we're staying. That's the gazebo on the peninsula at Miller Riverview Park. Let's check out the view from this side. Well, yeah, that is quite the view.
There it is, the Dubuque Water Tower.
We're gonna make one final stop today in town, at the place where we're gonna have a meetup in a couple of days, most likely. So let's see what it looks like. Sample the local craft beers, maybe get a bite to eat.
This is the Seven Hills Brew Pub.
It seems nice. A bit noisy, but nice. We were going to get an outside table, but we ended up at the bar instead.
Nachos. Well, the Seven Hills Brew Pub. We may have the meetup here in a couple of days. The beer was good. The food, sometimes it feels like, and that happened today at lunch too, like they don't follow their own recipe. And the dish is always missing an ingredient. Like here, the nachos didn't have tomatoes or olives or onions that were in the menu. So, in any case, we're gonna go back to the campground, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yep, we made a wrong turn and ended up in Wisconsin, but it's okay. A good excuse to cross the Mississippi again.
All right, we're gonna go for a little ride here, and a little later than I was expecting, actually, because we spent most of the day working, and then, of course, we are on an electric-only site here. So what happens? We had to go to the dump station.
In a quarter mile, turn right onto Greyhound Park Road.
It took forever to fill up the water tank and then dumping it. I think we wasted an hour doing that. In any case, we're going to Key West, Iowa. There's a Key West in Iowa, so I have to go see it.
Key West. Key West. Key West. Key West.
Well, here we are, Key West, Iowa. According to Google, this is the center of town. I don't know if there's like a city hall. I see a park. Oh, that's a cemetery. We're going into Wisconsin now, actually. Beautiful area around here. This is Key West Cemetery. There we go. I knew we were gonna find a sign that said Key West.
Welcome to Illinois.
Yeah, somehow we went over the wrong bridge and ended up in Illinois, got stuck behind this guy with a pontoon boat, and eventually Wisconsin. Our destination today is the small town called Potosi, Wisconsin. Population 688, and allegedly it has the longest main street in the world. It is pretty isolated actually, no cell phone signal to speak of, but it is home to the Potosi Brewing Company, makers of good old Potosi beer, from 1852 to 1972. Nowadays, they've been going through a restoration project and they make some really good craft beers, so that's why we're here. I'm looking forward to sampling their Potosi IPA.
This is Potosi Brewing Company in Potosi, Wisconsin.
It certainly has that old saloon feel. I mean, take a look at that copper ceiling. Since we are in Wisconsin, we're gonna have a beer cheese soup and the brisket melt. Delicious.
Well, that was outstanding. Thank you, whoever recommended this place. Good beer, great brisket sandwich, and now we go back to Dubuque.
It's been a little smoky here in mid-July, and even though it is bad for the air quality, not to mention the environment, the particles in the air give the sun an eerie look when it comes close to sunset. It is actually pretty unique, not to mention photogenic. And we're back in Iowa. Morning. So several people have been telling us about this town in Illinois called Galena. So that's where we're going. I'll be honest, we've arrived a little disoriented, not sure what we're going to see or do, but we'll find our bearings. now crossing the Galena River, and the fancy ornate building is the Belvedere Mansion, built in 1857. It is considered the city's finest mansion. This house here to the left was given to General Ulysses S. Grant by the citizens of Galena after his return from the Civil War. There's a museum inside, but I don't think we're going to do that today. How about we visit a sculpture garden? Well, this is it. West Street Sculpture Park. The artist, John Matheson, he opened his own studio here in 1986, which eventually grew into this park. This is the type of art that reminds me a little of East Jesus at Slab City in California. This seems to be John's studio right here. Let's continue. Very nice homes here in Galena, huh? This seems like a cool area. It has a certain European vibe to it, doesn't it? With all the outdoor cafes. We must find parking. There's even an area coming up ahead that is pedestrian only. Maybe we can have something to eat at one of these places? Yeah, parking seems to be a challenge around here. It says daily parking, pay attendant, so I think we're gonna do that.
And here we are, Main Street, Galena, Illinois. Thank you to all the people who recommended this place. It's a lovely town. Let's see if we can do a wine tasting.
We decided to wait and see what else the town has to offer, although we might end up doing the tasting after all.
Decisions. So many places. I see a brewery, Galena Brewing Company. Let's check it out.
Well, the brewery was closed and the first restaurant was understaffed. So
Yeah, we've gone around the street like 3 times already. It feels like 3 times. Because sometimes one is not enough. They're tiny, don't worry.
well, yeah, we ended up right where we started and we could never find anything to eat, but we had a lovely time in Galena. What better way to say goodbye to Dubuque than having a meetup? And what a great time that was, sharing ales and stories from the road. We continue exploring the great state of Iowa, and over the next few days we're going to be attending the Winnebago Grand National Rally in Forest City. We're going to go briefly into Minnesota and also a day trip to Omaha, Nebraska, and eventually Des Moines, the state capital. But more about that on the next episode. Until then, thank you so much for watching and see you on the road.
I'm riding in my RV, wherever I want to be. And 'cause I'm free in my RV, yeah, I'm riding. I'm riding in my RV, wherever I want to be. 'Cause I'm free in my RV.